Do you ever look back on your early childhood and wonder which memories are real and which are fabrications of your overactive imagination? Have you ever had a memory that you think might have been a dream? Our minds are capable of doing terrible things to us, but so are people. I am not sure which one traumatized me for most of my childhood. I remember despising kindergarten. I went to Duggan Elementary School in Varner, Tennessee. Naturally, I hated it. But how I felt about that place by the end of the year went beyond simple loathing. Obscure memories of those days still resurface in my mind from time to time. I remember hearing and seeing things that I was too young to understand. I just have these vague images and sounds in my head that I can barely recall. I don't have nightmares anymore. I guess what scares me most is the memory of how I felt at the time. Recently, I found an old photo album of my kindergarten year. It took me back in time. I recognized a picture of my teacher. He was an extremely old man who we called Mr. Arata. There was something about him that seemed, well, he didn't seem very child-friendly. He drove a long white van to school every day. It was called the Stupid Van because the kids all hated him. Mr. Arata was irritable and cross, but he sure knew how to act when he was being watched by other teachers or the principal. One day at my house, I remember my mother telling me that one of my classmates had gone missing. She was watching the news and, understandably, very upset when a second child in my class went missing. My mother abruptly pulled me from school. She told me that she would send me back when it was safe. I thought it was great not being in school. I was too young to understand what a child's disappearance could actually mean. Too naive to think about it realistically. I remember that after a while, I went back. The kids had been found, but they did not go back to school for whatever reason. I heard one of my fellow students tell me that the kids who had disappeared had no recollection of what happened. She said that they had been cut open under the belly and stitched up. I knew those two kids well. I think her name was Katie or Kitty or something. I just assumed that she was lying through her teeth. Even as a 6-year-old, I wasn't credulous enough to believe something like that. Later on in the year, I remembered the girl, let's just call her Katie, talking about how one of the kids who had previously gone missing had passed away. She took a week off of school because of it. Apparently, she had kept in touch with the two kids after they switched schools. Katie said that the child had been sick ever since they found him with no memory. At this point, I thought she was making up more lies to get attention, but she did seem genuinely miserable now that I think of it. Little kids aren't that great at acting. I remember going one day. I had a terrible nightmare. The day started out normally. I remember going to lunch, and I think I remember getting up to leave after the bell had rung to return to class. I'm not sure what had happened next, because that's the last thing I remember before having the nightmare. Suddenly, I was on a table, strapped down. I could see tinted windows on the narrow walls by my side. Everything was pretty dark. I was in a very cramped rectangular room. I just sat there for a moment. Clearly, I remember looking about and feeling the straps on my wrists and ankles. I looked to the side of me, and there was a tray with surgical instruments on it. I do not know how I got there in the first place. I was confused and on the verge of tears. A man dressed like a doctor came to see me. I couldn't make out his face because it was so dark there. He just looked at me for a moment, and then he turned on a bright light that was mounted over top of me, like the kind of that they use when you go to the dentist. He was wearing a doctor's mask and had a blank expression on his face. I was stunned with fear. He casually reached for a scalpel and grabbed one from his tray. I began screaming and crying. He looked slightly taken back. The man uttered a few words, but I couldn't make out what he was saying. I awoke to the harsh scolding of Mr. Arata. I was lying down asleep in the bleachers in the gym, where we would wait for our bus numbers to be called. He was telling me that I had fallen asleep and missed the bus. He took me back to his class and called my mother to pick me up. I started crying as soon as I had time to think about the dream. He didn't try to comfort me. He didn't even ask what my problem was. He just stared at me. I told him that I had experienced a terrible nightmare, and he nodded at me. At least, I think he did. My mother spent the whole day trying to reassure me. The most disturbing part is, I usually wake from a nightmare as soon as I begin feeling terror. But this, I was screaming, thrashing about for an extended amount of time. It all seemed real. I was convinced over the years that I had hallucinated. I began getting homeschooled because I was extremely terrified of going back. My parents couldn't understand how a nightmare could cause someone to have the kind of issues that I had. I had a few dreams about the experience. It wasn't like I was having a reoccurring nightmare. It was as if these nightmares were much less real than my original nightmare. They were just the original experience in dream form. They say that the sense of smell is the best way to remember something. Years later, when I was a grown man, I visited my grandfather in the hospital. There was something about the smell that had brought me back. It made me think about that dark room. I went over to my parents' house and flipped through some of the old photo albums, looking for anything to help ease my curiosity. While I was looking through the photo album, I found a picture of the class and Mr. Arata. I found some writing on the back, but it wasn't English. Arata is a Japanese name, so I guess that was what the language was. I knew that one of my dad's friends spoke Japanese, so I took a photo of him, and he translated it for me. I looked underneath the original text to see the scribblings that the man had left. Translation said, "I had a great time working on you this school year." I went back to the photo album and stared rapidly, searching through it. I didn't want my dream to be a reality, but I had to know for sure. There were photos of me performing all kinds of activities. I even found photos of the time that my mother brought the class cupcakes for my birthday. Almost every picture had Mr. Arata in it, with a stern look on his face. I held one picture in my hand, a picture that my mom took of me during a school play, and it seemed thicker than the others. I noticed a tape on the edge of the picture. Two pictures had actually been taped together. I took a knife and cut the two pictures apart. What I saw haunted me. Underneath the regular picture was a picture of a small boy strapped to a table in the dark. I compared the picture with the other ones, and it was me. I looked on the back of the picture of the play. The back was originally facing the picture of me on the table, and it had more Japanese writing on it. I had to sit down. The dread and paranoia was coming back to me. I took the writing to the same man who had translated the first note. He seemed quite confused by what he read. I came to this country to continue what I started in Manchuria. Thank you guys for watching this CreepyPasta reading. This is the first one of these that I've ever done, and I was just wanting to do it because I was curious on trying it. If I get good ratings or like have people view me. If you guys like this video, please like it. I will do another or maybe several more. It's fun to read CreepyPastas because it's just you just get to read stuff and it is like a mystery. But I would rate this CreepyPasta a 9 out of 10. It's a really good CreepyPasta in my opinion, and how it started, it was losing my attention in the beginning, and I had messed up a few times while starting it, but it's a pretty good creepypasta from what I have read. I was trying to put piano in the background, but it changed to an ad, and I had to turn it off, so if you guys hear like a small abrupt ending to the music playing in the background, well, that's what it was. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you come back next time for the next creepypasta reading that I do. See you guys next time.